focused on inspiring more young people to pursue careers in STEM. So we work with industry and education partners across the region to support STEM initiatives and try to act as a bridge to pull resources between those two worlds. And so on the in-school side of things, we provide a lot of wraparound support for Project Lead the Way in schools in Kansas City and in our region. And in the out-of-school space, we do a lot of work with FIRST Robotics and some specific initiatives serving underserved populations and women. Oh, excuse me, So we are, we're very excited to do these competitions, and they basically were designed to provide motivation and to encourage and recognize students who have been involved with the Project Lead the Way curriculum in schools. And if you're not familiar with Project Lead the Way, you can go to Project Lead the Way on the web and learn a little bit more about that curriculum. But it's a very hands-on and rigorous curriculum that's taken in conjunction with college preparatory math and science courses at the high school level. These students go through 4 consecutive years of either pre-engineering or pre-biomedical science courses. And by the 4th year, they take a senior capstone course, either the engineering design and development course or biomedical science, biomedical innovations. And those students do one major project during that year. And so this contest, or these 2 contests, are designed to recognize excellence, academic excellence for students participating with those capstone projects. They were really made, the competitions were made possible about a year ago with the advent of the Innovation Portal technology, which you'll learn about today briefly, but predominantly how to negotiate the kind of this online environment. And it really provides an opportunity for students to upload their work into an electronic portfolio and for us to connect that work with professionals who can judge it. And what's great about it is it allows you to be a judge from the comfort of your office or the kitchen table at home. And so it's enabled us to actually recruit 90 judges for these 2 contests, between the 2 contests. So we're very excited about the contest. And students are, in relation to the timeline, students are submitting their portfolios as we speak, today and tomorrow. And then I will be assigning portfolios to judges on the 1st. You have a 2-week window until the 15th to judge your portfolios, and then we will be announcing the winners at the April 19th Senior Showcase. And I will be sending everyone a separate invitation to the showcase, but it's certainly not required. But if you're interested and available to come, it's a really neat day. We'll have over 350 kids there showcasing their projects, and it's wonderful to have professionals come and see them in person. So before we get into the judging, or to the actual kind of logistics of the judging process, I wanted to let you know that at the end of the judging window, I'll be sending out some information about who the winners are, but also a link to ask you to participate in a survey about your experience as a judge and how you felt the rubric tool and the Innovation Portal worked, and just any feedback that you might have in regards to the competition. So be looking for that, or be thinking about any, as you're going through the process. This is only the 2nd year that we've done this, and so we're still very interested in trying to improve it as much as we can. So we appreciate any and all feedback. So at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Elliot Mork with Project Lead the Way, who is the wizard of the Innovation Portal. So he has been helping me with any technical problems as we move along, and so he'll lead us through the logistics of the Innovation Portal.
Thank you, Anne. Before I get going, I want to check a few things. One, that I successfully unmuted, and another one is that you find the chat box and that you can see my screen. So if you can hear me and you see my screen, if you could just put in the chat box that hi, or that you can see my screen and hear me. All right, looks like it is working. Okay, so we can go ahead and get going. My name is Elliot Mork. I work with Project Lead the Way. I work in the development office, and my work focuses on connecting our industry partners to the classroom and to students to positively affect the student experience. A large part of that work revolves around the innovation portal. And so I work to manage the innovation portal and support the platform that competition administrators like Anne use to run competitions. So today we're going to be going through a few things. I want to give you an outline of what we'll be covering. The first two steps you've probably already done. I think Anne has informed me that most of the judges for the Kansas City area competitions have actually created an innovation portal account and have connected it to the competition. And those are the first 2 points there. The next thing we'll cover is an overview of how the innovation portal works, how the online system works, what is it for, kind of a context for it. We'll talk about how to access portfolios that are assigned to you to review, about the rubric you'll be using, a little bit of background, and then some specific information about how to actually utilize that rubric, show you how to access that rubric, and then accessing scored examples as a judging resource. So embedded inside the rubric, which the innovation portal is built on, there are scored examples to help you as a judge calibrate to what how you should be evaluating student work. You only see a snapshot somewhere between 3 and 5 portfolios when you're judging, so you don't get to, like a science fair project, you'd get to walk around and get that context for student work as a whole. You don't really have that on the innovation portal, but we do have those scored examples to show you this is what a 3 looks like, or this is what this score looks like. The last thing we'll cover is submitting your scores back to Anne. She'll be sending out portfolios for you to review, somewhere between 3 and 5 portfolios, depending on how many student submissions that are actually submitted in the next 2 days, and then how many judges that she has. So somewhere between 3 and 5. We've had a lot of feedback from judges that say the first portfolio to evaluate takes a little bit over an hour. And then each portfolio after that takes a little bit under an hour. So 3 to 5 portfolios, about 3 to 5 hours, 3 to 5 hours of work. So that work will occur in a 2-week window, 14 days from April 1st to April 15th. And so all those scores of evaluating those portfolios are due back to Anne by April 15th, so that she has a day or two to collect that, decide the top 1, 2, 3. And then compile that into the winners list and for her final event, I think on the 19th. So we'll go ahead and get going. The first step, which I think you've covered, so I'll go pretty quick through this. I think most of you are connected. The first step is to create an innovation portal account, which is there is no judge type account. There's no student account, no judge account, no teacher account. It's all the same account, and then you set up permissions within the innovation portal with invitations. So the first step is just to create a public free account on the innovation portal. The second step is to report the email that you used to register.
I'll get it.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and mute someone here. All right. The second step is to give that email to Anne, and then she can send you an invitation to connect you to the competition. So once you have the account created, you are able to get connected to that account with an invitation, get connected to the competition with an invitation from Anne. So you need to look for that invitation, and then you'll receive an email, and within the innovation portal, you'll see a notification on the left-hand sidebar. There's an area called My Notifications. You can either accept it there or through an email. If you click the email twice, you'll receive a 404 error the second time because the invitation is already used up. Don't worry, because you're already a judge. So it worked, and then clicking it the second time, it's a one-time link, so then it fails the second time. But you're already hooked up as a judge if you click that email and get a 404 error. That's the last step, to accept the invitation. Once you've accepted, you're connected into the competition. So the innovation portal as a competition tool, give you a little bit of context of what's happening with the Kansas City area competition. Right now, students are working on their portfolios. So students can work by themselves, with a partner, or with the whole team. The competition may have requirements about no single one student may submit a portfolio, or they may be fine with that. So it can be several people, it can be single person, it can be pairs. The first step that students have already done is register for the competition. there's a registration window before the submission window, so that Anne the competition administrator, Anne, can start communicating with those student teams to let them know when the deadline is and what they need to do to submit the portfolio. And she can also get a perspective on how many judges that she might need to recruit. So this year there's quite a bit of student interest, and so that required about 90 judges for both competitions. And so this registration phase that students go through allows her to know how many judges she should be recruiting to set that target. The next stage that we're actually in right now with the Kansas City area competition is the submission window. The submission window for both competitions, engineering and biomedical, in the Kansas City area is March 14th through the 31st. So that's tomorrow. Everything is due for students. It's the latest they can actually submit their student work. It opened up March 14th and then due on the 31st. Once that submission window happens, students will be, actually during the submission window, students will be uploading their portfolios that they created up to the competition, making a copy of it, and then putting it into the competition as it stands that day when they actually submit it. There's going to be quite a few portfolios submitted to the competition, so there's a bunch of them. On April 1st, and in the morning, we'll be able to look at how many submissions that she has and then use an algorithm that's built into the innovation portal to automatically assign you as a judge 3 to 5 portfolios. For this year, it looks like most judges will receive 3 portfolios, and maybe some may receive 4, but that really just depends on how many submissions are received. So Anne can say, I want every single portfolio reviewed 3 times by 3 different judges, and then the algorithm does that calculation and then distributes 3 to the one judge, 3 to another judge, and then distributes all of those portfolios to several judges. So then this is the next window of time, which is the judging window. You have 2 weeks from April 1st to April 15th. I think there's 2 weekends built in there that you have some time to actually to take those 3 to 5 hours, depending on how many portfolios you're assigned, to evaluate those based on that the rubric that the innovation portal is built on. And then you will be sending your scores back to Anne by April 15th so that she can tally those up. So the innovation portal, on the user perspective, just a little bit on how students are using it. Any user that creates an innovation portal account, which is free and open, sponsored by Chevron, which enabled the innovation portal to be built and be free, any one person can build a portfolio. With that portfolio, they'll be the owner of that portfolio, but they can invite project partners in to work on the same portfolio. You can invite a team, a project partner, to either view your portfolio, to collaborate and edit your portfolio, or co-own the portfolio. And you can invite any number of project partners in with those permission levels to view your portfolio or to work on it. You can also invite your teacher. So a lot of teachers have their students invite them to be a viewer because teachers don't really want to do any editing of the student work, but they want to keep an eye on that student work occurring. What they can also do is invite project mentors, which are working side by side with the student, giving feedback along the process when they actually are building up their portfolio. And then there's another permission level to a portfolio, which is called a review. And that's what you'll be doing within the context of a competition, but students could have reviews done by individually requesting their project mentors to do a review of their portfolio to give them a perspective on what their work would have scored at that point in time, and then some comments about what they could do to improve that work. So once they've done that work in the portfolio, students take their snapshot or their portfolio and send it to the competition as it is at that time. So they need to do this step by tomorrow, I think, at midnight. And then it'll be in the competition. What's really neat from the student perspective, though, is that the Innovation Portal is a platform for multiple competitions. And so they can actually submit to several competitions if they're eligible for it. So we have at least one international competition that is hosted on the Innovation Portal. Conrad Foundation hosts their Spirit of Innovation. And I think that one, the final round, is actually just ended last week, and it's in evaluation phase. But if a student that worked that wanted to put together a portfolio for the Kansas City competition, they could have also submitted the same one to the international Conrad competition. So as a user, you can create multiple portfolios. You're not limited to one. We're not limited by sheets of paper or binders that we have. So it's digital world, so you can have as many portfolios as you want. You can create multiple portfolios. And to back up a little bit, each portfolio, I like to think about it as a 3-ring binder. So you have documentation of the engineering design process within that portfolio. You have tabs along the right-hand side, and then you have multiple pages based on different stages of the engineering design process to document your work during that stage. So at this point, I want to pause for some questions to see if there's anything out there. You can either unmute yourself and ask it, or the chat box is available if you want to type anything in. All right, with no questions, I'll go ahead and move on. If you think of any questions while I'm showing you this interface of the innovation portal, please feel free to either to unmute yourself and jump in, or to type in the chat box, and then we'll when I notice it, we'll stop and address that question. So this is the innovation portal as you view it when you log in. The only difference being if you have a judge account, and you will not see the same portfolios listed here because these are the ones associated with this account that I created. The first thing you'll notice is the left-hand sidebar, the navigation bar on the left. The innovation portal starts us out on the My Portfolios page or section, because it assumes that's really the backbone of the innovation portal and assumes that you'd like to create a portfolio. In your case as a judge, that's actually not the thing that you would like to do when you log into the innovation portal. The same. So what you will see is I have 46 portfolios listed here attached to this account. You'll have 0, and so you'll just see a page that says you have no portfolios. Would you like to create a new portfolio? But that's not what we want to do as a judge. The first thing we want to do as a judge is I want to show you the My Notifications sections first. So if we click on that left-hand navigation bar, these are where all the notifications that attach to your account will come in that you can either accept or reject. So most of you, I think, have already accepted an invitation to judge the competition that associated with either biomedical or engineering design competition. And you could have either clicked an email, or you could log in to the innovation portal and see the notification here. You don't have these notifications yet because on April 1st you'll receive them from Anne, but this is a notification that you've been assigned to review a submission within a competition. So this account was assigned to review this forklift safety portfolio, and for the opportunity, this is an opportunity we use for summer training with teachers, but yours will say Kansas City area. So on April 1st, you get an email automatically. I think Ann will send out a separate email, and you'll receive the notifications here. So somehow you will hear about your submissions when you're assigned to them. So to find the competition, we can go to the left-hand sidebar and click Opportunities. The opportunities page is every single competition or opportunity that is currently active on the innovation portal. We use the word opportunity deliberately because there are some things in here that are actually not competitions, but about 90% of them are competitions. So for example, the Master Teacher Forum is a tool that the Master Teachers for EDD use for summer training, but it's not a competition. So we do use opportunities. We've also had some internships that were hosted on the innovation portal in the past, so it's an opportunity. But most of these are actual competitions. The next two competitions that are due in that submission phase window, I think the next one that's actually due is the Kansas City area. So we have the Kansas City Area Engineering Design Competition, the 2016, note the date, and we have 2016 Kansas City Area Biomedical Research and Design Competition, and these are the next two that are due. Note in the top left we have filter by tabs. We have current competitions that are currently in the stage of students submitting work to it, and then we have this past button. Once you have submissions assigned to you, these two competitions will move into this past bucket because the deadline for student submissions will have already passed. So these two competitions will not be on this tab, and they will actually be in a past tab. So we can go into the past tab and take a look at that. It'll look something like this. This is the 2015 version of the engineering design competition, and this one will actually disappear on Friday when the 2016 versions come over here. So you'll be looking for the 2016 Kansas City engineering design competition. for the purpose of this training, I'm going to use this training example competition because it's how I have this put together to show you what you will do on Friday or April 1st once you have the submissions in your account. So we can click into this competition. This one is pretty sparse because this is just a training example, but for the Kansas City competition, you could read a little bit of description about what the competition is all about. On the right-hand sidebar, you have the registration open and close, and then the submission open and close for students. And then you have some other specific information about who is eligible to actually submit to this competition. You know that you are a judge in a competition once you have this blue menu bar on top. If you are not a judge for a competition, you can still view all this information, but you will not have this blue bar that says view and reviews. So as a judge, once you're assigned the submissions, you can click on reviews, and you will see a list of all the reviews for the competition that you are actually assigned to complete. For this account, I have 11 portfolios assigned to it, and I have completed 6 of them. The 6 just corresponds to how many trainings I've run this spring, and we complete 1 per training. So we have 6 out of 11 done. As we complete each portfolio, this 6 will increase in number, and the 11 will stay the same based on how many we have actually been assigned. So each portfolio, this is one portfolio here, the first box, Lawnmower Kickstarter, we can see that the review has already been completed because it has the word complete right underneath here. So that one's already done. We already have the first couple ones complete, but we can go down here to see the first one that is still active. And this is one that we have not actually completed. So we can click into this one and see the student work and start reviewing it. So I mentioned earlier how the innovation portal was built on the backbone of a rubric and kind of in the format of a 3-ring binder. So what you're looking at now is the cover page of that 3-ring binder, kind of that plastic insert on the front page of the binder, and then the tabs along the right-hand side with letters. So right now we're in the cover page, which is on the right-hand menu bar, and then we can scroll down and hover over different elements or different tabs on that 3-ring binder. The first one is A, that has content that will actually be evaluated, because on the cover page there's nothing to actually evaluate. There's just some information that students can put there. They can maybe just put their names and who they are in the picture or whatever they want to put as a cover page. But we can go into A, we can hover over A and then click on that actual letter to load the content that the students have put in element A. And then before we go a little bit further into the rubric, I want to say just that the rubric is the result of a multi-year NSF grant with a lot of high school engineering educators and college engineering educators that have come together under that NSF grant and have developed this rubric. The whole goal of the rubric was to precisely document the engineering design process, so then you could evaluate student portfolio work based on adherence to that process. So we're going to be very focused on how students satisfy a process and not necessarily the originality or innovativeness of the idea, but how much they have adhered to that design process documentation. So there's been a lot of validation testing of the rubric, and this specific rubric has been in use for over 3 years now and has a lot of good validity data that judges can use this and come to pretty similar scores evaluating the same student work. So you have a lot of resources as an evaluator, as a judge with this rubric. In element A, the first you have a few different things for each element actually. Element A is presentation and justification of the problem, and you have a few different pieces of information to help you evaluate the student work that we see in this window here. So if we go over to A, the first thing I like to point out is the reflective questions. When we work with students, we tell students that these reflective questions are kind of like a checklist for them. These are, so it's phrased in a way to say, did you offer the reviewers of this portfolio? And then several different checkboxes. So the students can ask themselves that question and make sure that they have included everything that they need to include on in their portfolio in this section. So you can use this as a reviewer to get an idea about what this element actually covers and what should be in there in the student content. So those are reflective questions that you can ask yourself if they offered that. The next thing I want to point out to you is the actual rubric part with scores. So every single element is going to be evaluated with a score of ranging from 0 to 5. Dr. Goldberg is the one that will be sending out that survey that Anne mentioned after you do this evaluation process. She was heavily involved in the creation of the rubric as well, and is now, there's current ongoing research about how judges actually utilize the rubric and these training tools that evaluators use. So any feedback you have on the rubric, that survey is the place to put it. But in conversations with Dr. Goldberg, we've learned that good rubric design is kind of like a staircase. So a 5 is the best score, and you have a description here of what the portfolio should look like to receive a score of 5, kind of a description text. And then one step down, what a 4 looks like for this actual element. And the spacing between a 5 and a 4 should be the exact same as between a 4 and a 3, and then a 3 and a 2, and a 2 and a 1, and a 1 and a 0. So that even spacing is pretty difficult to accomplish creating a rubric, but has been done here for you. And then another thing I want to point out about this scale is that if you think a portfolio might be a rating of 3, or maybe it's a little bit better and it's close to a 4, but it doesn't really meet the full requirements of what the 4 describes, this is a score of best fit. So it's not a sharp cutoff like a staircase. You either make the next staircase or you don't. It is a best fit. So if it's between a 3 and a 4, but it's closer to a 4, it should receive a score of 4. So it's best fit to the closest number here. So that's pretty good information for you as an evaluator to read through that. But then still, you may have the question, well, what does typical student work look like that should receive a score of 3? So the last piece of information you have built into the rubric is the scored element examples. And before I actually click this, I want you to take your attention up to the upper left-hand part of the screen. It's going to open up a new tab. So I'm about to click this here, and it opens up. This is a separate window that opens. Your browser may jump to this automatically, or it may load separately, or it may download, but what we're looking at here is a PDF document. What we have is those high school engineering educators and college engineering educators underneath that NSF grant. Part of the work they did was take a bunch of sample student work and evaluate a bunch of different portfolios. Really exciting work to watch engineering educators sit in a room and evaluate student work. Not really, but what came of it was a really, really powerful tool for you to use as an evaluator. So collectively, they came together, and this is some student work that collectively, there's a collective agreement that this is a score of 3. So the first thing you have in this document is the commentary from those engineering educators that evaluated this portfolio and wrote a description of why this is rated a score of 3. So you not only get the rubric description, you get the actual student work to see what is a 3, but you also get to get in their head about why it is a 3 and why it's not a 2 and why it's not a 4. So that's the commentary section first, and we can scroll down. We have the full rubric, all 5 components and all 14 elements listed here. The relevant one is highlighted. This is element A. Then we can go deeper into element A, and for element A we have the description text for scores from 5 all the way down to 0, and this one is a 3, so the 3 is highlighted there. If we scroll down further, we have the actual student work. So this is the student work that was actually evaluated, and this is a 3. So you can look through this, you can scan through this to see exactly why this is a 3. Use that commentary to know why this is a 3, and kind of go through it. One thing I want to note here, that when students are creating a portfolio, they're actually creating a web page, and it's not as clean as a web browser, not as clean as a word processor. They're creating a web page, so formatting when printed out like this can be a little bit not clean. And what we want you to do is focus on the content and not necessarily the formatting, because when they build a portfolio, it's built to scale depending on multiple different screen sizes. And when you lock it down to one screen size, it might not look the best. So please focus on the content, not necessarily the formatting. So this one, you'll get to see some cool student work. One of the downsides of doing this virtually is you don't get to see the full science fair. You get to walk around and see every single project. You only get to see yours, but you do get to see some pretty cool and neat stuff. You might see the top 3 scoring portfolios, or you might see the bottom 3, but either way, there's a lot of neat student work that high schoolers are doing. This is an example of a high schooler taking on a project of traffic lights. Their city replaced incandescent bulbs with LED bulbs, which is a really neat idea because you can save electricity and save some money with electricity. The only problem is in colder climates, when it sleets or snows, that can actually build up on the LED bulbs, because that incandescent bulb, that waste electricity or that heat coming off of it would actually keep the lens clear, but the LED wasn't able to do that, and so then they actually lost money by sending crews out to clean this so motorists could actually see the lights. So one pretty cool example that I think if you solve that problem, you could make a lot of money. But that's what the students were doing in this one. But we can go back over to the portfolio. I want to pause really quick to make sure there's no questions, if there's any questions about using that side rubric there. All right, with no questions, yeah, quiet group today. We'll move on. So this is A. We've come to consensus that this is probably a score of 3. We've looked at the example. We know it's not a 4, but we think it's a 3. So then once we actually want to write that score down, I keep jumping back to that science fair example. For you as a judge, the score sheet or the clipboard or the piece of paper that you'll actually fill out your score on is this little blue pin down here on the right-hand side. So by clicking here, you're not actually assigning that score, you're just viewing the rubric. But if you click down here, that pen, you'll bring up your actual score sheet or your clipboard to do the reviewing on. So we thought this was a 3, so we can click that 3. And then, it's assigned a score of 3. If we're still not sure whether that's a 3 or 4, we can open up another copy of the rubric by clicking that plus button. And then we have another copy of that rubric as a window we can pull around here. So we can toggle between a 3 and a 4, reread that and kind of think about it, 3 and a 4. And then once we've decided this, we can say, yep, I think it actually is a 3. And it becomes a little bit of an issue with screen real estate when you're seeing student work, you're seeing the rubric and your score sheet. And so we can be done with that and click the X button to actually close that. So we're pretty sure it's a 3. And then we can add a comment as a judge. So we can say, I think this is a 3 after using the rubric. So that can be your comment. Everything that you put in the innovation portal is saved every couple microseconds automatically. So there's no save button. Everything is just constantly being saved. So we can close that score sheet and we can open it back up and we still have our score and we have our comment there. So this one is, this means element A is scored. We're done with that one. We can close it up and then we can go to B. We not only have to hover over B, but we actually have to click B to open up that student content on the next element part. We can do the same. We have the same, not the same reflective questions, but we have reflective questions, the same format here. We can read through those. That's that checklist of what students were making sure they had. And then we have the element rubric, scores ranging from 0 to 5, and then we have all of the portfolio examples down here. And it looks like the LED, Snow Clear LED visor only got a score of 2 on the documentation stage. And the element B is all about that research stage to figure out what other people have done to actually solve the problem that you stated in element A. So we can close that. Once we're ready to evaluate element B, we can open up our score sheet and we can say maybe this one got a little bit lower of a score or a little bit higher. Let's say it's a 2 for this example, and type a comment. This element was weaker than the last. You forgot to include patents. You could, whatever comment it is. And I see a question over here. If I see the project is unlikely produced by a high school kid or copied from internet, what is the score? That's a good question. I think Anne can chime in a little bit on this one, but my perspective is that it's going to be pretty obvious if this is copy and pasted, because there's not a lot of work out there that actually follows this process. This process really does demand original work. It's hard to copy something. It's not like a paper that you could copy about it. So there's, I think, Anne, if you want to jump in and provide further guidance on that, but I just haven't seen that issue in the past.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's two things. One, part of the process that the students should be using has to do with looking at prior work. And so in those situations, they may be copying and pasting. Here are some examples of patents or things that people have already done in this that are related to my idea. But then I can't drive the the, the portal, but Elliot, will you scroll down just a little bit to on the elements? I can't remember which element is. But okay, so like D, go to D. Design, concept generation, analysis, and selection. This should be some evidence that they have actually looked at what's out there and then come to some new conclusions about related to their idea. So we haven't had an issue come up where their actual idea was something that was copied. But if you do happen to see something that is like doesn't appear to be original, then you could probably the best thing to do would just be shoot me a text and we can kind of look in and look at that and see what we think or touch base with the teacher. All of these projects are being overseen by a teacher at the high school level, and so hopefully that teacher is also kind of making sure that they're doing original work.
Yeah, and I think the teacher will be doing that screening. So I would tend toward maybe identify it to Anne, but probably just evaluate it as is. And then that can be dealt with maybe at a later time with Anne connecting with that teacher to verify it. But it's not an issue that we've seen come up at all, just because the process is pretty in depth and it's hard to just copy a process over for this design process.
Yeah, good question though. Thank you.
Yeah, good one. So we were evaluating B. So let me go back to that. I think we put a score in here. Okay, so for each element, you pretty much just repeat that process that we did in A and B, making sure that we open up that pen icon to actually to open up our score sheet or our clipboard, and then close it when we're done. So we're going to repeat that for all of the elements except M and N. If we go into M, and this is just a decision by the Kansas City area competition that they won't actually be evaluating these elements for student work. It's the presentation of the project portfolio and writing like an engineer won't be evaluated. Oh, and it's not loading here. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so element N, you'll notice that there's no pen icon in the bottom right-hand side, so you won't be able to submit a score for either element M or N. Because there's no pen icon there. So if you don't see a pen icon, that means it's not going to be evaluated. But the engineering competition will be evaluating A through L. So once we go through A through L and do that evaluation process and have scores submitted for each of them, we can use this button, Complete Review. So once we click that Complete Review, this is what I like to call the Amazon shopping cart page, because we get to review everything we've done and make sure that we actually confirm and we want to go forward with these scores. So we can look at each element, element A and all the way down through L, look at the comment that we wrote for it and the score that we put on the actual review score sheet that we put on our clipboard. This is stopping at that judge table at the science fair and reviewing what we did before we actually give it to the scorekeeper. So we can scroll down. If we don't submit a score, we'll have a question mark. So if I were doing this for real, I'd say, oops, I forgot to do C, actually put a score in there. I can go back to the actual portfolio and change that score. I can't actually change the score on this screen, but I can see what I've done. Scroll all the way down. You will have a question mark for M and N because you won't have that pen icon to open up that score sheet to actually put a score there. So there will be no score associated for M and N. And then one thing, you can change all your work up to this point. Once you click this button and click this complete review, you will not be able to change any of the scores that you've submitted. So the analogy I like to use here is that we've filled out our score sheets on that clipboard, but then we're not physically there at the science fair. We actually have to mail it in. So clicking this button is like putting a stamp on the envelope with all of our score sheets, and then clicking complete review is like dropping in the mailbox. We've committed to it, we've done it, it has sent off to the competition administrator, and we can't actually change any scores. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. At this point, we're comfortable with these scores and we want a complete review. Once we click that button, we can't change anything. After we click that, we get dropped into the My Reviews part on the left-hand sidebar, and these are all the reviews that have either been assigned to you or you have already completed. So you have active and complete. You can filter by those. On my account, I have 14 that have been assigned. You will have much fewer, probably between 3 or 5, unless you've done this before for last year's competition. We can scroll down, and I think, which one did we have open? I believe it was, I forgot. Maybe might have been rotator cuff injuries. So we can click into that. Yep, and there's this one. We can view all the student work again. We have all this loaded up here, but if we go to element A, you'll note that there's no blue pen icon on the bottom right-hand side because we can't evaluate it anymore. We can click on Review Summary and see the scores that we submitted. So we have that score 3 and we have that score 2, but we can't change anything on this. We can just view what our scores were and the student work if you go back to review. The last thing I want to show you here is we can go back to opportunities to find any more portfolios that we need to evaluate. We have the 2 Kansas City competitions that you'll find in this Past button on April 1st. So if we click Past, the 2 Kansas City competitions will be here. You can click the competition that you are assigned to. For this example, we'll use the training example. Go into there and go into Reviews again. And we have 7 reviews complete out of the 11 that we are assigned. And you'll have somewhere between 3 or 5 reviews, and then you'll have 1 more completed. And we can scroll down to the rotator cuff injuries and verify that that is complete. And we can move on to the next one that we have that is active, that is not complete. We can click on the next one to actually start evaluating there. And then just repeat for however many portfolios you have, and you'll have somewhere between 3 and 5. So with that, I think that kind of brings the functionality part of the training to a close. And Anne, if you have anything else that you'd like to say. Oh, I'm sorry, I got one more slide, sorry. You should have received these 2 documents already, the PDF step-by-step guide. This is just how to get on and access those portfolios in a one-sheet instruction sheet. You'll have those reflective questions from the element. And then what I don't think you've received, but you will receive after this training, is the full rubric for every single element, which is quite a lengthy document. But if you'd like to either print it out or use a separate screen to view the portfolio as you're looking at student work, you can do it embedded in the innovation portal. But if you'd like to separate in another screen or print it out, you can do that as well. So you'll be receiving that large document there. But with that, I think it brings my section of the training to a close. Thank you very much for spending your time as a judge. This really provides a lot of opportunity for students to get recognized for excellent engineering design work that they accomplish in their classroom, and it just couldn't happen without the judges like you to be there and actually evaluate their work.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elliot. So just a couple of closing comments. Based on last year's contest, I think the most prevalent questions that came up from judges came once they sort of got into the judging part. And we had a lot of variation in the types of projects, well, maybe not the types, but the quality of the projects that were submitted last year, because the students weren't real familiar with using the portal, and the teachers weren't very familiar. And we still have a little bit of that situation this year. We did try to encourage them to build their projects in the portal over time versus uploading at the last minute. But I will just say that there may be a lot of variation, and the best thing to do is just stick with the rubric in terms of making your best fit scoring. And you may have a lot of low scores. You may have a lot of high scores, depending on sort of the random assignment of projects. You may end up with the top 3 or the bottom 3 or a mixture of both of them. So I do think what helps is if you just really kind of use the rubric to do your scoring. And then again, I will be sending out a link afterwards to do the feedback. One of the comments that came up yesterday was in relation to providing comments while you're judging. And we would love to have you comment on the student projects as you're going through the process. You don't need to do a lot of in-depth review here. I mean, you don't need to spend a lot of time. However, we are going to provide those comments back to the students. So any comments you want to provide would be great. I also sometimes have to use those as I'm kind of looking at if I have a kind of a tight score.
And just to clarify, you're providing the comments to the teachers who then can choose to pass those on to the students or not.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to let the teachers sort of decide how to provide that feedback to the students. So yes, that's exactly right. And then I will also be sending out this link to this YouTube. You can go back and reference for the training and the documents that Elliot mentioned. And at any time over the next 2 weeks, once you kind of get into the judging, if you have specific feedback about the process, or for me, you're welcome to just shoot me an email also, or if you run into any problems, please don't hesitate to get a hold of me. And we want to make sure that we try to deal with problems as they come up. So we appreciate everybody being on the call today. And if you are a biomed, so if there are any questions at this point while everyone's on the call, just want to pause for a minute and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, so thank you once again.
We had one question pop up.
Oh, okay.
Do we judge for creativity, or creativity in the project gains extra points?
Oh, actually, very good question. So the short answer is no. This process, this is really judging how well the student has applied the design process, either the engineering design or experimental design process, to their project. So it really is much more a function of how well they do the process. So it may not be a particularly interesting project or creative, but it really is identifying how well they are engineering and or doing the research process. But it's interesting that you bring up this question, because this came up last year, and so we actually have a third competition that occurs during the Project Lead the Way showcase, which is the Innovator Awards. And they are much more focused on the aspect of creativity, whether or not it's a creative, innovative idea, and whether or not it has market potential. So, but that judging process is actually a very different rubric. It does not look at the engineering piece of it. It has much more to do with just the creative aspect of the idea. And so those students have an opportunity to win an Innovator Award. So they may not have actually done a great job on the engineering or the research side, but it could just be a really good idea. And we want to recognize those too. So, so yes, those students have an opportunity to be recognized. It's kind of through a different rubric, but for the purposes of this online contest, it is much more an evaluation of the process. Great question. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well, thank you again, everyone. And if you are judging on the biomed side, please stay on for just a few minutes. And engineering folks, thank you so much. And you'll be getting your projects this weekend. Okay, so we may have some people falling off, but I should have Maria and LeMay and Jeff still on the call. I think I have you guys on board to do the, let's see here, the research, and maybe even Larry. Larry, do I have you signed up to do the engineering or the biomed?
I'm just logging off. Yeah, I'm engineering. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Can I just send you one question? Can these students, you mentioned this innovation thing, can these students apply to be considered in that as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the way that the innovation awards work is that the teachers are the first screening for that. So they will be recommending the first level of students, and then once they come to this showcase, we have some entrepreneurs that will be doing those evaluations.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, so for my biomed folks, just to give you a little history on the biomed side of this. So as Elliot mentioned during the training, this rubric was designed as to measure the engineering design process. And so it's gone through all of that testing, a lot of validity work, a lot of work with people actually using the tool. And so we feel very comfortable with the application for this on the engineering design process. We piloted it last year, and we had a lot of, and our biomed teacher said, boy, we would really like to do a similar type of competition for our students on the biomed side. With the caveat that there's a lot more flexibility in the biomedical innovations course. Those students can do a variety of things. They can actually do a job shadow and career exploration, or they really encourage them to do an experimental design project and or create something, do a biomedical innovation, some sort of design project which is closer to the engineering design process that the engineering students do. So we had some fairly in-depth conversations with those teachers and a couple of industry folks about whether or not this tool would be could have good application on the biomed side. And what we decided was to go ahead and to try it this year and to use it, and with the caveat that as we talk to our judges, that we invite them to just consider this as the experimental design process is very similar to sort of the engineering design process, with the only kind of caveat being some of this, there's like element G here, which Elliot has popped up, is construction of a testable prototype. That might be relevant in a couple of the biomed projects that are submitted, but if students are doing a more traditional experiment, this may not be necessarily obvious to them, and so we are going to omit this particular element. So you will not be judging element G for the biomed contest. Some students may have information in this element, but we're not going to grade it at this point. We're going to go ahead and make the contest based on elements A through F and H through L. And then if we do have some question, if at the end we feel like we need to go back in and add element G, I've identified a small group of judges that are going to actually help me kind of go in and use element G as sort of a tiebreaker. But at this point, I'm thinking that we will not need to do that. But the biggest thing is that this is the first time that we're trying to do this, use this tool with the biomed group. So you are a bit of my guinea pig judges, and I really, really value your feedback on whether or not you feel like this is a tool that can be effectively used for these projects, or if you think it's too confusing. For the most part, the language is all very consistent with experimental design, and so we feel like it can work well, but we want your feedback. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context. Do you have any questions?
I love being a guinea pig for things.
Oh, good. I'm glad. We did actually work with Dennis Ridenour from BioKansas kind of early in the year to look at the tool. And I think most of it is just a language thing, and so I apologize, we don't have a lot of biomed examples built into the portal. That's something that we hope to continue to grow. And it's interesting, in Wisconsin, that the contests that they do up there, they do not have two separate contests. But they do have biomed kids that submit projects to their contest. So they haven't run into any problems yet. So I'll be curious to get your feedback. Any other thoughts or?
I think this was a good opportunity for us all, Ann.
Great.
Students and judges.
Great. Well, I'm very, it's always interesting. We have some neat projects this year. So when we're done, I think I'll send out the list to everybody, a link to sort of the full list of projects. So kind of people get an idea. And then we will also, at the very end of the contest, give everybody the opportunity to view the top 3. And so that way you can kind of get a feel for how the top 3 projects turned out. Any other questions or thoughts?
Question, Anne.
Yes.
Yes, this is Simon, UMTC. So as I look on the website for the first time, it looks like we have no review yet. And as you mentioned, the previous speaker spoke about, mentioned that. So after the beginning of April 1st, we'll see the portfolios. So therefore, it's not clear yet where we put exactly the grade. It will be in a portfolio area or my review section.
Correct. So once you have a portfolio in your account, it will be much easier for you to sort of navigate along.
Yep.
The way Elliot went through the training.
So one check you can do to make sure that you are a judge, and you will see the reviews come in when they do come in, is if you're in BioMedical, you can actually click this link here and note that I don't have that blue bar on top. So this account is not a judge for this competition. But if I go back and go into that training example, you're going to have to click this pass button and then click the BioMedical. But if I click this pass button and then go to this training example, I have this blue bar on top. And wait for it to load. And I have this blue bar on top here. So that means I'm a judge. If you click reviews, you should have zero reviews assigned to you right now because there's no student work assigned to you to review. This account has 11 assigned, but you won't have any assigned until Ann sends it out on the 1st on Friday.
Yeah, and you'll actually get an email that says projects have been assigned to you or something like that in the innovation portal. And so you'll know that you have those reviews should be in there. And then once you get in there, it would be, you'll have this YouTube link and you can pull this up if you run into any problems, or certainly feel free to give me a call. But it's hard to play around with it until you actually have something in your account.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so thank you all so much again. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any problems, and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.